of the week is just simply this. Why doesn't God act? There's so much wrong in the world. There's so much injustice. Why doesn't God act? Yesterday we were in the Newcastle, do we call it the centre or the CBD or whatever it was, opposite the museum. And there was a couple of hundred people in the city centre with Palestinian flags. They were talking about justice for the Palestinians. Now you could ask a lot of questions about that. Is Israel committing genocide? What about justice for the Jews? What about justice for all the other groups in the world that are oppressed? But I must admit, I have some admiration for those who genuinely care and are seeking justice. Last weekend, there was a protest around the port here by people who genuinely believe that being the largest coal port in the world may be funding Australia, but is destroying the earth. Well, they tried to do something about it. Now, the key question for me is not the rights and wrongs of these causes. We basically don't debate these in a sermon. That's not what I'm talking about. But the key question for me is the effectiveness and the efficacy of the actions. Do we really think that our little actions are going to change the world? I saw the port thing that people were boasting. We stopped 500,000 tons of coal leaving. Yeah, on the Sunday, but it left on the Monday, so it didn't really make any difference. You know, I mean, will waving a flag or carrying a placard in Newcastle, New South Wales bring justice to Gaza? Does a village council in Australia passing a motion about Palestine bring peace more likely? No, it just makes you feel better. Or you're stating what you want. Now, you may strongly feel it, and you may be right in what you feel. That's not the issue. The issue is we're so powerless. We think we're not, but we are. People say, no, you're being defeatist when you say that. It means we do nothing. No, I'm being realistic. What would you do? Yes, I would do the small things, but I'd also do the big thing. And this is the big thing, pray. Why? Because Mary looks at the God who brings justice and the God who's going to renew the earth. So what has he done? What has God done? Has God acted? Is God acting? Yes, and it begins with this. Mary sent his son into her womb. God remembers to be merciful. He remembers his people. He brings down rulers from their thrones. And I keep thinking about that. And I don't understand Christians who say, well, we're going to be wrecked because Putin will come to power, or Xi Jinping will come to power, or Albanese will come to power, or Donald Trump will come back to power, or, you know, everyone, you know, Obama's the Antichrist, or Bill Gates is the Antichrist, or whatever you want. And Christians go, oh, this is terrible, and we have to stop this happening. Don't you understand? God brings rulers down, not us. They're not going to last. They're not going to survive. He performs mighty deeds. He's been mindful of the humble and the poor. He scatters the thoughts of the proud. Do you know what I think is happening in terms of our cultural confusion at the moment? It's God saying, okay, you want to get rid of me. I'm going to scatter the thoughts of the proud. You would never have thought this 10 years ago, but now we have leaders in your country who cannot tell us what a man and a woman is. Who would have thought we'd ever be governed with such stupidity? And that's only the beginning. God leaves us to ourselves. He brings rulers down. Notice here as well that salvation implies judgment. When you're asking God to act, you're asking him to judge. Remember that. He scatters the proud. He sends the rich away empty. King Herod, the disciples would know full well what happened to him. Caesar, perhaps even Theophilus, who this has been written to, is being warned, you're a political ruler. Be careful. God scatters the proud. How? How does God act? By sending Christ and everything that comes from that. Because it is through the life, death, resurrection, and ascension of Christ that people are changed and thus societies are changed. It is through his Spirit poured out upon us that we are renewed and given the fruit of the Spirit. If you want to know what God has done, you look at the cross. And all our puny actions pale into insignificance compared with that. So do your protests, do your political actions, run the revolution, but remember, the only revolution that really turns things upside down is the revolution of Jesus Christ. All our protests and actions, though perhaps well-meaning, will degenerate into self-righteous virtue signaling and further conflict and trouble unless we see ourselves as the problem and the answer to that problem as being Christ.